It's not just a 6-weekend story. No, this is a character that has been developed over years and years and years, and has his ways. Think of every year as a new chapter to a big book.
Bienvenue. Welcome to Coffee Talk with King Francois I, where we will discover the tales, trials, and talents of Renaissance Festival performers, merchants, and die-hard attendees as we journey by way of light-hearted and even at times heartwarming conversations about the Renaissance Festival world. I am your host, Theodore Jander, aka King Francois I. Bonjour. Welcome to Coffee Talk with King Francois I, episode 19. I am your host, Theodore Jander. In this Coffee Talk, you will share in my conversation with James Withrow, who is a relative newcomer to the Renaissance Festival world, but is someone who has a tremendous love of stories and who introduces us to the Irish Penny Brigade. It was an enlightening and enjoyable conversation. So, grab a cup of your favorite brew, sit back, and enjoy this episode of Coffee Talk with King Francois I. Do want to welcome you to Coffee Talk with King Francois I, and my guest is James Withrow. And your journey had started out as a patron, very much and very quickly becoming a patron, and then ultimately becoming involved with the Irish Penny Brigade. And I do welcome you to this episode of Coffee Talk with King Francois I. Welcome, James.
It is a pleasure.
Outstanding. One of the icebreaker questions that I have is I, as well as I would think potentially my listeners, would like to know about a favorite coffee shop. And if you have that, where is it located? What makes it your favorite coffee shop? And what do you like about it?
Actually, this coffee shop is out of business. It was my favorite coffee shop.
No.
I haven't yet to find a favorite coffee shop here in the St. Louis area. But I will gladly tell the story about this coffee shop in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Okay.
It was called the Fish Coffee House. It was actually right down the hill from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It was one of the universities that I attended. And they always played live music there. It was a great place to socialize, to connect with peers, make new friendships, and to, of course, enjoy a good sandwich, freshly made, and a good cup of coffee, from everything from espressos to frappes.
And was this is the one that's no longer in business? Yeah. Okay. And what was the name again?
College Coffee House.
College Coffee House.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm part of the Irish Penny Brigade. That's a international club, whiskey and rum tasting at the St. Louis Renaissance Festival.
Now, have you always been a part of that?
That actually started 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So I've been doing it for a couple of years. My actual name is, as part of that, is Jammy.
Jammy?
Yep. Which means lucky in British.
Cool. And that started 2 years ago, you said?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that in the past 2 years, you've been a part of the Irish Penny Brigade. Now, is the St. Louis Renaissance Festival the only one that you're involved with?
Yes, that is our home fair for Clan Hannon. That's our clan name. That's our home fair.
Cool.
Actually, me and my family, we've been attending the St. Louis Renaissance Festival since 2018.
Only 2018? Mm-hmm. Really? Wow.
And I've been in a multitude of different types of themed events, such as there's live action role playing up in Alaska. We used to have to drive 365 miles just to go LARP for a weekend. before getting into Ren fairs, that was the first part of actually getting dressed in garb and getting into the whole history behind things, the fantasy behind it, and all that.
How long had you been involved with LARPing?
About 5 years. I grew up in Alaska, so pretty much from the time I was 20 to about 5 before I moved down here to Missouri.
Okay. That was your first Renaissance Festival in 2018?
Very first, and it's like it was yesterday, and I still to this day in awe. And it was just the camaraderie, the people, the laughter, the history behind things, everybody's little stories, to go along with, the years and years of doing the St. Louis Renaissance Festival and how they got their start in it, and the character development and how these characters became to be historically and also enveloped inside the Renaissance Festival at St. Louis.
Now, when you first attended and to have seen all of that, when you first attended, were you attending in garb, or so to ultimately be a part of it?
It was more so like the first time it was like, okay, I would like to do something. So we went and got some just cheap costumes and just, kind of just get our start in it. And me and my wife and the kids. And day one, we actually didn't have garb or costumes or anything like that. Day one.
Okay.
The following day was when we decided to dress up and all that, make sure and then after that, it was just, we started adding more and more and more and more to our garb.
As you said, it's starting out ultimately as almost like just day one, being a patron, but venture to say that really kind of at the heart, definitely a patron. I mean, someone who's like, we're definitely going to look at building garb, building into it. We established that the first time you had attended a Renaissance Festival, and within a day, you were essentially hooked into the whole experience of wearing garb and all that a Renaissance Festival offers. I mean, as far as the characters, as far as the energy, the camaraderie and the family, as you had said, those were all components that really attracted you to the Renaissance Festival.
Yes.
Nice. So one of the questions I have is, has attending Renaissance festivals, is that something that's benefited your life outside of Renaissance festivals?
I believe it has, in not just myself, but also my family. It's something interactive. It's always a learning experience. It allows us to really bond with one another and to kind of do things as a whole, beneficially, like outside of the Renaissance Festival. It's something to look forward to every year. It's something that we brag to our friends about, and they laugh. They're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, okay. You're no different than a carny," and it's like,
"Oh, there's right." Well, and there's a substantial difference between what who would be considered a Rennie versus a carny, and yeah, it's a different world.
It's a fine line.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned your family as something that you have the opportunity to do together, and that you've had that experience, and you've been welcomed into the Renaissance Festival world as a family.
Mm-hmm.
You've mentioned that the past 2 years that you've become involved with the Irish Penny Brigade, which one of the functions of the Irish Penny Brigade is to do whiskey and rum tastings during the festival. Since a lot of our listeners, this might be something that's new to them as far as having the opportunity of doing whiskey and rum tastings and just what the Irish Penny Brigade is. Would you be so kind as to share about what it is exactly, other than whiskey and rum tastings, or if that's the core?
Actually, that's not the core of the Irish Penny Brigade. We're actually a volunteer group, and we do everything from charity events where we garb out, we dress as pirates. That's our main niche, per se, is that we dress up as pirates, and we'll go to charitable events that we get invited to, and we will put on a show, per se. As like socialize and just entertain people. That is one of the biggest things was with the Irish Penny Brigade was that we were the pirates of the Ren Fair. Originally, they started off as we would walk around and heckle patrons or patrons, and we'd play along with everybody, get kids to laugh, and get kids to have fun, or, get parents to buy their kids stuff, even though they didn't want to buy their kids stuff. Just to have fun. And then it kind of grew into more so getting more actively involved in the fair itself. And the whiskey and rum tastings is one way to integrate us into the Ren Fair. And the whiskey and rum tastings was more so for an adult setting, to where we were given a location.
Right.
And it's kind of like the pirates hangout. And you've seen there next to the pirate ship that we have our own little shipwreck cove, and how we got there is there's a grand story behind that too. I don't really want to go too much into it, but the shipwreck cove and how it came to be, and the whiskey and rum tastings, as far as that goes, it allowed us to kind of have a home base for us, more so interact with not just children, but to also interact with adults that come by. Hey, what's going on here? When they see a bunch of pirates hanging out, and it's like, oh, hey, by the way, we do an adult whiskey rum tastings. We do 2 whiskey, 2 rums, and it's close to the end of the day. Come and play Liar's Die. That's one of the staple pirates game that everybody kind of knows about from a particular franchise by a very big corporation.
One of the things that I've noticed this year in particular, and I don't know if it was just, I don't know if there were more of you or what, but I do know that walking during the course of the day, during the course of the Renaissance Festival, that there always seemed to be activity going, and there seemed to be a crowd. There was definitely a good energy going, and as far as the interactions that you had, what a great thing to offer and provide, in essence, because once upon a time, the St. Louis Renaissance Festival in particular had a pirate group. And since some of those smaller segments of the cast have dissipated some, it's nice to see a group that's still actively involved in the Renaissance Festival Day as far as providing an experience for the patrons. I think it's great that you yourself, having started out as a patron, and you now have this opportunity to be a part of this group that then provides experiences for patrons and patrons. Having that whiskey and rum tasting is really just a small portion of it. It's that opportunity for some of the adults to gather and to have some of that camaraderie around adult beverages. But at the same time, it's just an opportunity for you all to have a gathering place and for people to be drawn to. It's another location that people can go to. And who doesn't like pirates? I mean, they're always really a lot of fun. I mean, even the ones that are created to add a little bit of potential like scare factor or whatever, it's ultimately done all in fun. And to see that wrapped into what you all are doing, it's a really cool thing. And I'm really excited to know that, because then it's something that moving forward, not only be able to do or continue doing at the St. Louis Renaissance Festival, but the potential of branching out to other Ren fairs and such. And I imagine that is something that is part of that organization.
I will actually fill you in that there are IPB at the Kansas City Ren Fair. I'm going to name off a few. There's Michigan. There's Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indianapolis, Florida, Texas, Philadelphia. They're different clans. It's not just our clan. There's a lot. And annually, every year, they pick the IPB of international organization, pick a Ren Fair to meet up annually for everybody across the whole country, and also over in Europe come and to dress up, play pirates, and have fun at the Ren Fair.
Wow. So internationally, everyone that's part of the organization decides on a single Renaissance festival to convene at. Oh, what a cool thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, nice. Out of that experience and out of your involvement with Renaissance festivals, what is a favorite memory that you have? I mean, something that either impacted you or your family.
I'd have to say this last Ren Fair, something that I found was really, really great and just memorable is my oldest stepson. He got his first job in his life. He's 16. And his first job in his life was St. Louis Renaissance Festival, working concessions.
Nice.
The aspect of the Ren Fair is him making that leap towards adulthood, and it was something that he enjoys and he has fun doing.
Nice. So it was, in a sense, a milestone for your son to take on that responsibility and to be involved and to hold a job during the course of the festival. That's cool. And to want to be able to do that, I would imagine, especially selling popcorn and
cotton candy.
And cotton candy, you're going to have a lot of interactions, especially with kids. What child doesn't like cotton candy? Nice.
Memorably, per se, that is something that I have a lot of pride.
Cool.
As pertained to myself and the Ren Fair, most memorable experience would have to be with spending time with King Henry and some of the shenanigans involved with him, going around the fair and following him and sometimes heckling him and enjoying the joust.
Nice.
It's hard to kind of break down because when you're someone like me that enjoys every little aspect of it, the world that's around it and the world that's within it is very difficult to break down and say, what's my most memorable, cherished memory of a Ren Fair, of the St. Louis Renaissance Festival? How can I really pick just one? Can't I enjoy it like a beautiful garden of roses? You never pick the flower that you love the most because it wilts and it fades.
I like that analogy. To think of a Renaissance festival and really with St. Louis being your, it's really your home festival because that's where you began your start with an introduction into Renaissance festivals, that it is that. And it is a very unique garden as far as all the different things that you can experience. That's pretty brilliant. One of the questions that I've been asking all of my guests, and it's a Renaissance festival oriented question. Who would win in a joust, you or the jester, and why?
Me or the jester, dueling one another on a joust on horseback. The complication thing would be is who's trying to entertain the crowd the most. It would be a show. It would be a banter. We'd spend more time with one another than fighting.
So who, in that regards, then, between the bantering, so instead of the actual jousting with lances, it becomes more a jousting of wit, you could say. And I know something that's a part of some of the video game and some of those, the gaming world, in essence, and something that I've experienced having recently been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, is the concept of flighting. Part of it's a battle of wit, but it's also a battle of wit in rhyme.
A historical figure that I actually very much enjoy reading his works is William Shakespeare. When you watch a Shakespearean play, it's a battle of wit between two counterparts. And it is something that is what really, really brought a renaissance to that time and that period. It was something new. Somebody dueling one another through wit and not at the lance or at the end of a sword.
That would definitely be a change in Well, one, longevity of life. I mean, if there's a disagreement between two individuals as opposed to the potential loss of limb or life, it's potentially maybe more a loss of pride in your ability to not match wits.
Yes.
Huh. Nice.
And back to the answer to your question on win. Who would ultimately win? Physicality. A jester is usually big. A jester is usually loud. Sometimes they're lanky and small. It would all depend on his physique per se, but at the same time, determination on to win a physical joust. Someone like me, when past experiences, all that, I never turn my head when I have a target. I seek it, I go for it, and I strive for it no matter what. If I get named by that joust, I will still hit my target. So it would possibly be we would both end our fates at that joust.
Nice. Since you had mentioned William Shakespeare, would it be safe to say that William Shakespeare would be someone that you would choose to have coffee with on any given day?
If I spoke the language and if I drank coffee, I would definitely sit down with him.
If you were to have coffee, say with William Shakespeare, what is your preferred roast?
Actually, it's a breakfast blend. I'm a pretty classic person, It's one of my most simplest beverages that I'll even drink. It's a breakfast roast coffee, mild on the roast with cocoa. It is a simple mocha.
There you go. Probably can't go wrong with a nice breakfast blend. It's like you said, that kind of mild. It's not in your face.
Also, the caffeine content is a lot higher in a mild roast than a dark roast.
Right. That is true. That is true. And there are days during the Renaissance Festival day that, depending on what time of day, most of the time, well, usually if it's in the morning, I would usually go with a light roast because I know there's a little bit more caffeine. So just to kind of help start the day. And then if I'm going to have anything later in the day, so it doesn't affect me as long, would then to go with the dark roast. Here's a question, even though you've been doing this for 4 years and then having become involved with the Irish Penny Brigade, is that involvement something that motivates you to keep attending, or are there other things that combined with that drive your interest?
The biggest aspect of more so with the continuance of attending is becoming part of the story. Festival in my from what I've seen has a big story, has a grand story. Mm-hmm. There's always a story behind every story. And that's one of my biggest strides personally, is to become part of that story, become integrated, woven, and to further that story as much as possible and grow with everybody else. The IPB is only a chapter within this story of my journey amongst the St. Louis Renaissance Festival and many others that I do plan on attending.
Nice.
So there's always going to be more every coming year for me. I'm going to be looking for more things to be a part of, to go with. May it be from more friendships. May it be to maybe one day moving to where you are as a cast member. There's so much more doors every year that I've attended that have opened up for me. The IPB is just a small chapter within this journey.
I very much like how you talk about, one, the journey and your story and the story of the Renaissance Festival, that you go to a Renaissance Festival and there's some form of an overarching story or multiple little snippets of things going on to either one, to that larger one, or there might be multiple.
I'm going to go into something if you don't mind. Have you?
Oh, no, absolutely. Go for it.
Have you ever played D&D, Dungeons and Dragons?
I have not personally played D&D. I know a former roommate that has.
As a dungeon master forever, I'm a forever DM. I write campaigns. I do story writing. There's always a grand story behind every little chapter of a story. Within every adventure, there is always a grander story to be part of. And so being involved with the St. Louis Renaissance Festival, I imagine it as a world within a tabletop game almost. It's not a game to me, but it is a world that I can explore, adventure, and become part of, and just add to my life and add to many others' lives. And that is a big course on in Dungeons and Dragons is the story. And everybody has their own little story if you give them the time to tell that story.
I think it's so brilliant, that idea of those stories and the stories behind the stories, and how important it is to have the opportunity to share stories, and what a unique environment that a Renaissance Festival offers.
Yes, just like, how Sir Francis has his story that's interwoven over years at the Renaissance Festival, and how it's kind of diverted off and kind of stemmed across everybody and has touched everybody, and how your story of your character is grown up and enveloped within this world, just like King Henry's story, the bird, the Cardinal Thomas, and his story, how he came to be within this history of the Renaissance Festival. I've taken my time to learn some of the Cardinal stories, and how the jousters and their story. It's almost like you want more. You want to learn more of their story. That's for me, of their character. With Renaissance festivals, you can't think of it as just a show of entertainment just once. There's a grander story that people do not know because they haven't given the time yet or haven't been able to have the time. There's a big picture. And I'm one of those people that look at the big picture and to see moving parts and how the characters are constructed, how the characters are interwoven with one another to make this grand story, and how it's portrayed into a reality. Everything from the jousters to the royal court to the vendors. The vendors have their character story too. And it's just an amazing thing to be able to learn that, be a part of that.
I think it's a great thing to hear, and I think to know that someone, in essence, who's only been involved for 4 years, but ultimately the way you look at it is significant, and how for those of us that have been doing this for longer, there's the potential that maybe we've lost a little bit of that, not the spark, but realizing that bigger picture, realizing how significant all of those moving parts are for the story, and how one thing that happens at this point during the day, how someone who experiences something there is part of the story, and then they experience something else that's a part of somebody else's story, and then how all of those stories entwine. I think it's an important piece to take as a performer. It helps us to realize what it is that we're doing, that when you're providing that immersive experience for people. So thank you for that.
And that's exactly what you as a cast member does, is you are this character within a story, a grand story. It's not just a 6-weekend story. No, this is a character that has been developed over years and years and years, and has his ways, this character, and you have this pinnacle time each weekend of the Renaissance Festival to where the story gets carried on. And every character that interacts with you, may it be from a patron, may it be from a fellow cast member, it's all a part of this grand story, the St. Louis Renaissance Festival. Think of every year as a new chapter to a big, big, big book.
Yeah. And the thing too, and that's just the thinking of with the St. Louis Renaissance Festival, and just to think about how many Renaissance festivals there are and those unique stories. And there may be there are Renaissance festivals where you're going to have a Henry VIII, and you're going to have a Queen Elizabeth and King Richard, and you're going to have multiple fairs that have those people, those characters, but each one of them is going to be unique because of the experiences at that specific location. And so that's really brilliant. So thank you for that. As we draw things to a close, just want a couple other questions. One, is there anything else that you would want to tell the listeners but haven't had a chance to do?
One thing, I look forward to seeing more people, and I look forward to possibly meeting some of your listeners at the next year's Renaissance Festival. May it be at the Whiskey Rum Tastings, may it be just pictures with the pirates, or, taking treasure for your kids.
Brilliant. To officially close this Coffee Talk conversation, I do want to thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day and just sharing your experiences and your interests and your love of stories and all that you've experienced, and those experiences that you provide for patrons and even cast and all those involved with Renaissance festivals. So thank you very much, James, and do want to wish you much Renaissance merriment and blessings in your new year as we near 2023.
And also, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. So thank you, James. I do hope you enjoyed this episode with my guest, James Withrow. If you are interested in the Irish Penny Brigade, I am including a link to their Facebook page in the show notes. Be on the lookout for the next episode to be released on Friday, June 16th, where I bring you my conversation with Joshua Jennings of Pirates, Inc. If you are a performer, merchant, staff, or diehard patron in or of the Renaissance Festival world and would like to be featured on Coffee Talk with King Francois I, reach out to me by way of clicking on the following link provided in the show notes: www.theodorejander.com/Coffee Talk Podcast. Would you like to receive early access every other week to each new episode, as well as receive a behind-the-scenes glimpse into the production and creative process for the podcast? If so, join the wonderful community of listeners supporting the show and making new things possible through Patreon. Learn more at www.patreon.com/Coffee Talk with King Francois. The link will be provided in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in to Coffee Talk with King Francois I. A bientôt. See you soon. Ciao for now, and au revoir.